Please be advised that the following talk contains coarse language and mature content, and it may not be suitable for all audiences.
He's an awesome individual, but one thing that I noticed in that video is that when the guy is going, all lives matter, it would be so easy for somebody who's come from a background of trauma and generational trauma to get triggered by something like that, because that chant has been used. But instead, this guy came from that place of love to go, you're right, and to pace and lead, to not go, and react, but to actually pace them and lead them back to, So, mic's open there.
Okay.
Use this if you want.
Trying to decide if I should sit down or stand up.
Chair?
No, I'm good. No, I just want to thank Patty. I'm not the easiest person to work with. All week we were in Ireland. We were hanging out. We were at the Cliffs of Moher, just eating good food. I went vegan for the week with he and Tiffany. And I'm still paying for it, but the fact of the matter is, he was like, hey, Hawk, what are we gonna do? You know what I mean? What are we gonna do? You got your slides ready? I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna go and talk. I'm gonna talk it out. The people sit down, have a conversation. So at about 8 o'clock this morning, I sent him 50 slides. So, look at his face. No, I'm sorry, but I was.
That could have been very different.
Yeah, but realistically, I was inspired by everything that happened yesterday, right? By what transpired in the room with the workshops, and even more so with the conversation outside with Ingrid and a few others. That it really moved me and kind of made me observe, just be cognizant of what it is that I do, what we do as a group. And one of the prevailing themes was, we are servants, right? Like, imagine if that was what came first on your CV or your cover letter, you know what I mean, your resume, like, hey, I'm a servant of humanity. And what I've decided to do was use the gifts that God gave me, this height, this voice, this stature that God gave me for the greater good, this education that I was afforded. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My parents met in 1969, right, at a civil rights rally. They protested against the city of New York to get African American studies taught in school. And when that class, when that curriculum was implemented, they gave them a white teacher. And they were like, these lessons should be taught by someone who is impacted, somebody who's black should receive this job. So my father had folks protesting outside. My mother looked out of the window and he like, girl, what you doing in class? Come on down here. Right? So they danced at discos for a few years, right, with afros and platforms. And then on April 4th, 1977, I was born. Does anyone know the significance of April 4th? It was the day that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968. It was also the day that Adam Clayton Powell Jr., congressman from Harlem, who was an activist, he died on April 4th in a different year. And the great queen, Maya Angelou, the poet, was also born on that day. So that day is very significant in the history of black folk in America. And on that night, it was like thunder. I'm serious. Thunder and lightning and rain. I'm serious, right? And you could say a force was born. My mother would say an evil force for the first 20-something years of my life, but that's when I was born. So I grew up in the South Bronx. We know the history and the stereotypical South Bronx that the news might tell you, but I know a different Bronx. I know a Bronx that's a community. I know a Bronx where you could walk down out of your house, go to the 4th floor and smell Puerto Rican food. The 3rd floor, smell Dominican food. The 2nd floor, smell African food. And you go outside and you got Jamaicans with dreadlocks. Like, this was community, you know what I mean? And we were just all bound together. That's my Bronx, where we played video games, where, I don't know if you remember, but there was something called a white flight out of the Bronx. It was like all the blacks and Latinx people came in, and the white folks was like, we out of here, right? So they left, and the landlords, rather than take the reductions in rent, they burned down the buildings. Yeah, they burned down the buildings so that they could collect money. So to the left of my building was a vacant lot with just rubble from a building that had been burned down. So my father gathered the community members, women, men, everybody, and they collected all the garbage and they put it in the middle. And my father's from Florida, he's a country boy. He lit it on fire, right? So the fire department came, the police department came, and they said, what are you doing? He said, I'm getting rid of this garbage so our kids can have a place to play. I'm doing what you should do, but you're not doing it. And so when people ask me, like, when did you become an activist? I can't give you a particular date because this is my life. This is what I was born into. I was raised like, I had two working parents till my father got sick. I used to dress like a preppy, which is, how could I put this? Polo shirts, right? Polo shirts, khaki shorts, you know what I mean? Like, I looked like a rich white kid. I didn't look like a black kid from the neighborhood, right? I had penny loafers. You guys know penny loafers? I would put dimes in them. I was a different kid. And I got picked on for it. You know what I mean? I got beat up a lot. And I remember in the 6th grade, I used to listen to Big Daddy Kane, NWA, hardcore rap. Then the next day I'm listening to like Guns N' Roses and riding a skateboard. And my mother would come in like, you're having an identity crisis. Like, what's wrong with you? And kids in the hood would call me White Boy Walter. And that's my born name. I changed my name to Hawk when I got baptized, when I gave my life to God. So yeah, skateboards and basketball. And around high school, I just wanted to be in it. I wanted to be down. I wanted to be just a part of what I saw around me, even though, you know, that wasn't who I was. You know what I mean? God says that we should not conform to the ways of the world. And I wasn't like the people in my neighborhood, not taking anything from them, but that's just wasn't who I was. And just so you know, in the Bronx and a lot of other neighborhoods, you might see, you know, people standing on the corner, people committing crimes or whatever. That's a small population of these impoverished communities. The majority of these people work extra hard, 50, 60 hours a week. They just don't make any money, right? So it's that there's a myth, this fantasy of a fetish that makes people want to believe that everybody there is committing crimes, and that's bullshit. I'm sorry, is it too early to curse? So I wanted to be down. So I dropped out of high school, started selling weed, you know, and now that weed has become illegal all over the place, I want those arrests that are on my record to be wiped away, right? And I also believe that because weed has become illegal and we had to pay such a harsh price for it, we should be given the licenses first, right? And you know what I mean? Like, yeah, we suffer for this. We should be given these dispensaries, and it shouldn't be another industry that's controlled by people with means who do not look like us. So, dropped out of high school. I'm cool now, right? But like I told you, I love basketball. So I'm not going to high school, but I'm playing basketball. My friends are playing for the high school and traveling from borough to borough. I play for a traveling team, and I'm in Canada, up and down the East Coast, California, Arizona. I'm playing with first-class athletes. Any of you basketball fans in here? All right, you remember Meta World Peace? Ron Artest, he won the championship with Kobe Bryant, right? That was my guy. Elton Brand, he's now the general manager of the Philadelphia 76ers. These were the people I played with, except They went to school and did the right thing. I hung out and smoked weed and played basketball. I mean, it kept me out. I mean, well, I was in trouble, but yeah, I couldn't say it kept me out of trouble because I was in trouble. yeah, it was trouble, right? So yeah, like it was so funny. Like we would go to basketball games, right? And I'm gonna get to these 50 slides that I made you upload this morning. But we would go to basketball games and they would travel the world with their schools or whatever, and they come in with like junior Olympic uniforms. And I come in with a do-rag on, my pants down, smelling like Jamaica, right? And I just didn't get it, but it was all right because it wasn't my path. My path was to do the wrong thing until I figured out how to do the right thing so I could go back and teach people who look like me how to do the right thing, right? Does that make sense? Y'all follow me? Good. And so boom, I went to college. Okay, now I'm in college. I didn't go to college to get an education. I went because all my friends were there playing basketball and it was a better caliber of basketball. It's just a fact, right? And a lot of people make a big deal. We talked about this the other day. A lot of people make a big deal out of, oh, this is the first person of our family to go to college. That wasn't it. Like my experience and the experience for a lot of people in my neighborhood was you're expected to go to college. It's not like this mystical, unattainable goal that they like, oh, you know, oh God, little black person in the hood, you can make it if you try. It was like, no, you're gonna go to school, you're gonna go to college, period. And in my building, we have Pilot. This is South Bronx, height of crack epidemics. People were shot in my building. Crack was sold directly in front of my building. We have a Pilot, we have a dentist, we have an editor of a magazine. I have a law degree. My sister's currently running for Congress. My other cousin is a lawyer. Another cousin is a major in the Army. And another is a principal. We also have entrepreneurs. So that poor kid from the ghetto story doesn't really apply to us. You know what I mean? Like we overcame, and there's opportunity for us to overcome, but we had help. We had a strong community. And when I moved on, I had other people who helped me get to where I need to be. So after college, I went to work for the Bronx District Attorney's Office. That's a prosecutorial office. So I went to work for the prosecutor's office, which was interesting because during the initial part, they set me down and they said, whenever you come across a case and there's someone you know, just come and knock on the door and let me know. I knocked on his door every fucking other week. like, hey, this is my friend from high school. This is my friend from junior high school. This was my neighborhood, right? And I clean up well. Back then I was a suit, right? So I liked Hugo Boss suits, right? So I wore good suits. And I wore my tie and I enunciated a lot more. You know, and I intentionally don't enunciate now because no one speaks proper English except for you. And you, sister. But this is the reality of it. Purple. Oh yeah, you're purple. Right on. So I went there and I worked and I would like ride out with cops to get evidence, right? And they'd talk to me about how they beat up people who ran from them. That's unspoken code. Whenever someone runs from you and you're a cop, you have a free pass to beat on them. And when they're sitting there and they're talking to me, and I'm like looking like, if you only knew, like, these are my friends. This is my family that you're talking about. And I'd look at these files, right? And every time somebody resisted arrest, right? They would have a black eye, okay? They would have knots on their head, stitches, staples, right? These people were beating just unmercifully for running. And this was the culture. And I worked in a prosecutor's office, and when somebody's prosecuted in New York, it's the people of the state of New York versus Becky Birthright, right? So they represented the people, but they didn't see us as the people. They saw us all as criminals. Why do I say that? I live 2 blocks from the courthouse. I leave work, I go home, I grab my dog, I had a Rottweiler, I throw on my hoodie, and we just walk through the neighborhood. And I see my colleagues. And I'd be like, hey, what's up? Oh, shit. I thought you thought I was one of these people from around here. Guess what? I am one of these people from around here. You know what I mean? This is who I am. But we had a mall put in place in our community. It was called the Concourse Plaza, and it was like movie theaters. It was one of the best things to happen to the South Bronx. They called it Perp Plaza, Perpetrator Plaza. These were the prosecutors. This wasn't just the police. And they worked hand in hand. So I got sick of it. I said, if I'm gonna sell my soul, I'm gonna work for an insurance defense law firm. And I went to work for the biggest insurance defense law firm in the world, Wilson Elser. And I managed projects and I crunched numbers. And then eventually I went to law school. While I was in law school, Trayvon Martin happened. And I was like, okay, I gotta do something. So I organized a rally at school. I organized that rally and I did something for the students, but when I did something for the teachers and the staff, faculty, something really unique happened. It was more, well, how can I say this? It was more diverse than I anticipated, right? There were people who I deemed conservative or even who I looked at and was like, you don't care about my cause or what's going on, who came out. We had a 90-year-old judge show up with a hoodie on for Trayvon, right? So that was my first time organizing. I'd attended rallies before. That was my first time organizing. I remember after law school, I ran for office in my community. I ran for city council. And I was running, and there was another rally for Trayvon in the city. Al Sharpton was hosting this rally, and Jay-Z and Beyonce were there. It was like this thing. So I go down there, and the rally's over. It was supposed to be a march, and I'm like, people are just standing around taking pictures. That's a lot of activism these days, taking selfies, taking pictures with people. I'm being real with you. And I was like, nah, this is bullshit. We need to march. So I took a few people. Some guys had a sign, 4 people, and my group, another 5, and we said, we're gonna shut down the Brooklyn Bridge. We're marching across the Brooklyn Bridge. So we start marching, right? We get about halfway, it's getting louder. I look around, there's 20 cops on scooters in front of us, there's helicopters, there's cops all around. I turn around, there's 3,000 people behind us, right? There's 3,000 people that are there in pursuit of justice. So I didn't win the election, and shortly after that, Eric Garner died. And after Eric Garner died, we protested. The cop was acquitted, right? And we protested for 30 days straight. It felt like we protested from Thanksgiving to the New Year, shutting down highways. Do you
want to, just in case, does everybody know who Eric Garner is?
Eric Garner? Oh, okay. Excuse me? Oh, okay. Trayvon Martin was a 17-year-old young black man who went to the store in his father's neighborhood, and he bought a can of iced tea and a pack of Skittles. And when he was walking, this maniac named George Zimmerman saw him walking and didn't think that this young black man should be in his neighborhood. So he picked up his phone. He was the neighborhood watch. He picked up his phone and called the police, right, and said, hey, this guy looks suspicious. Why is he in our neighborhood? The police were like, sir, stand down. We have a unit on the way. Sir, stop following him. They gave him explicit instructions not to pursue this young man, and he did. And words were exchanged, and Trayvon Martin, who was completely unarmed, wound up dead. Okay? Shot to death by a racist man, by a racist. And that man got off. He suffered no consequences because apparently in America it's still legal for a white person to kill a nigger for no other reason than that person being a nigger. And that's the world we live in. So, Eric Garner. Eric Garner was selling cigarettes It's a loose cigarette. We call them loosies, right? You buy like a 50-cent cigarette in front of a store. And the cops would always harass him for doing this. But you got to understand, like, sometimes people make money the best way they know how, right? I don't go into neighborhoods and tell people to stop selling drugs because I don't have a job to give them, right? The sheer economics of racism makes sure that these people cannot feed and sustain their families. So until I can give them a job, I can't tell them how to feed their family. Because if your kids are starving and your lights are off and you're facing eviction, there's not anything that any one of us in this room wouldn't do. If your babies are crying and your babies are hungry, you do what you got to do to feed your family. So I think we should take that into account when we look at people and judge them. So Eric Garner was simply selling cigarettes. Police came to harass him again, and he said, "Not today. Not today. You're not doing this today." He was just trying to communicate his feelings, how he felt to them. His frustration. Leave me alone. You pick on me because you have to. Let's take a step back. These police officers, right? Eric Garner was a big man, right? These police officers have this complex. They have this heightened sense of authority, as if they're stronger than us because they can do whatever they want and they get away with it, right? So you have police officers who talk tough to me who are 5'5", 120 pounds. And I'm like, there's no way if you didn't have that fucking gun and that fucking badge, you would even look me in my eye. Sorry, but this is how I see it, right? I'm 6'5", almost 300 pounds. You don't want a problem with me, but because you have this authority of the government, you treat me like I'm trash, I'm not having it, right? So they did this to Eric Garner, and he was telling them, no, you're gonna listen to me. And this officer grabbed him in a chokehold and wrestled him down to the floor. Eric Garner said, "I can't breathe," 11 times.
And there was about 6 or 7 other cops.
Yeah, there were cops who piled on top of him. But he said, I can't breathe 11 times. And eventually he died. He was placed in a chokehold. There's so much for me to give you right now. You have to understand, when Eric Garner died, Barack Obama was in the White House. It was a Democratic government, and we didn't get any justice. There might as well have been Republicans in office because of the way that this was handled. What you need to understand is neither Democrat nor Republican have the best interests of black or brown or LGBTQ people in America. They don't care, okay? The bottom line is we have to make them care. Who's the we? It's everybody in this room, right? You have to be a voice to the voiceless. So long story short, nothing happened to that cop who choked Eric Garner to death. He got 2 raises. He brings in about $150,000 a year now. And just to show you how much the government doesn't care about us, Barack Obama had the power under his administration to prosecute this cop. And he didn't bring the case to Washington, D.C. until 2 weeks before the election. And he did that to make some noise around the case so that Hillary Clinton could get elected, so that people could look at it and say, oh, the Democrats, they care. Look at what they're doing. And it's laughable. So you had the mayor of New York City who could have prosecuted this cop and fired this cop, who hates Donald Trump. He calls Donald Trump the devil. Everything Donald Trump does is wrong. New York's a sanctuary city. I hate Donald Trump. So, Mr. Mayor, what are you going to do about this Eric Garner case? Well, we're waiting to see what Donald Trump does first. Like, you get it? It's a lot. I'm sorry. But I digress. So, Freddie Gray, all of this happened, and now I'm about to go into activism as Black Lives Matter Greater New York. But I'd like to open it up as questions, just so I can give you a chance to ask me questions about anything you heard already.
When you became an activist, what was that internal mechanism, that internal feeling, that internal emotion? What was it that initially sparked in you that made you think you could do what you do?
God first, right? God first. But for me, I have a disdain for bullies, right? Like, I wasn't violent. I was a good kid. I get everyone the shirt off my back. Like, I was just there for people. I just loved everybody. But when people would bully me, and I was non-confrontational, I didn't want to fight. So the way I see it is, with these governments and these bureaucracies, they're bullying the little person. So it's my personal responsibility to fight back. Now, me personally, as a child, I wasn't really, I have one. It's not on.
That's for the camera.
Oh, that's for the camera. So, me personally, as a kid, like, I wouldn't fight. But if you mess with my sister, you mess with my friend, I was quicker to jump into action. So I guess it's my love for others and my love for God that kind of led me down this path.
I appreciate you sharing your story with us, dear brother. I want to ask you, one thing that I know to be true with my work is that it's difficult to connect two parties or two or more parties that disagree with each other, that don't deal with each other, that don't communicate with each other. And as a connector, like you are, reaching over the aisle, you're going to have both sides of the argument frustrated with you. Amen. For seeming, to them, oftentimes wishy-washy.
Yeah.
Or not kind of set and stable and firm in your position, because they're trying to figure out whose team you're on. Yeah. So how do you deal with the pushback from the right? I'll just say, for the sake of this conversation, I don't mean to be too polarizing or binary, but for the sake of talking politics, modern politics, how do you deal with the pushback from the left and the right in this regard?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question. In this video, the video that you saw, when I came back, I had a youth coalition march, and black people protested me because I went out there and I spoke to these patriots, right? And I spoke to these people, and I extended an olive branch. They said that I wasn't militant enough. They said that I wasn't hard enough. But what I looked at those people and thought was, when I was on the front lines in Charlottesville, any of you heard of the Charlottesville riot? Yeah. I was there, right? Fighting with my fist against people with knives, sticks, and guns, being pepper sprayed, right? Fighting white supremacy hand to hand. People who saying, nigger, I will kill you, Jewish person, I will kill you. I'm standing there saying, no, the hell you won't. There were 20 black people on the front lines in Charlottesville. It was about 200 of us. The rest of those people were white. Make no mistake about it. Our white allies show up for us, right? So we're there, but out of that 20 people, 10 of those was Black Lives Matter New York. The other Black Lives Matter groups kind of stayed away. Like, this is my reality. So when people come at me and be like, bruh, you're not militant enough, what side are you on? I'm like, I shed blood for this, okay? You look at my body, it cracks. Police arrested me violence and tore my rotator cuff. They damaged my nerves. I don't have feeling here, or in my toes from the police beating me as I was handcuffed. I have 2 lawsuits going against the NYPD, the New York City Police Department. So the Republicans, right? So that's the left. The right likes to hear you talk as long as you're saying what they want you to say, right? The right loves to hear you speak as long as you're saying the things that they want you to hear. However, if you come at them with facts and you go to the right people, you can make progress. The thing is, Republicans always say, you're on the side of the Dems, and the Dems keep you oppressed. And I have to say, you're right. But the bottom line is, we're not coming over to the Republican side because you have people like David Duke, right? You have white supremacists, you have people who make racist remarks, and the Republicans still stay with you. I see y'all looking over here, so I don't feel jealous of myself. I stand over here. That way I feel like we're all speaking the same language. But does that answer your question? Right on. So with me, a lot of people say, well, as a black militant, how can you meet with the KKK and talk to them? Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey both met with them. You know what I mean? And I don't think I should leave it up to Nancy Pelosi and them Dems to go and speak for me. I study Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Not as much as I study the Bible, but these are the practices that I employ. And in addition to that, I have a business degree, right? Communications, I have a law degree. I think for myself. I don't need these politicians to go out and think for us. In our organization, the most intelligent people are the women, of course. And some of them have, Ivy League degrees. I have young folks who are really pushing this movement ahead, who are very bright and very intelligent. So it's about strategy. And we're all going in the same direction. I just wish we could all work together, right? And for me, the other side, the Republicans, 60 million people voted for Donald Trump. A lot of those same people voted for Barack Obama. And we got to figure out why and bring them back over to the right side of things. Not what they're promoting, but to our side of things. Wow. Okay, so I guess you can see I'm super militant. And, oh, wow, you can stop it right there. This is the story of Deborah Danner that I told many of you yesterday. She was a schizophrenic woman who was shot 2 times by an officer. She was holding a stick, but she was also 12 feet away from him. There were 4 other cops in her own apartment in a nightgown. How threatening is that? And 4 other officers in that room said that they wouldn't have shot her. But Sergeant Hugh Barry shot her and got away with it. You want to go to the next one? Yeah. Now, this picture here is Charlottesville, okay? Now, I told a story yesterday about Charlottesville that was actually pretty funny. So we were there at the riots, right? We walk up, there's people standing around with guns, there's tear gas, there's smoke, there's a lot of things happening. The thing that stood out the most was, here you have these 2 groups that hate each other, standing in front of each other, and the police were 2 blocks over. Any other time you protest, the police are breathing down your neck. They're riding next to us, bumping us with scooters, but it was almost as if they wanted the KKK to slaughter us. That was my perception, was that you have 2 groups, one's heavily armed, the other has signs. You know what I mean? We're not the toughest group. Well, actually, he is tough. But this guy right here is a gay man that went to Yale Theater School. Could you imagine a Yale graduate in the middle of a riot? This is just my reality. I think it's cool. Maybe. But it's Jabari. So we're here, and I walk up, and they're like, be careful, things are flying. And I'm like, looking for my phone, right? And I'm like, don't look at your phone. You might get hit by something. And I looked down at my phone. I couldn't resist. When I look up, bam, a rock hit me in my face, right? So I didn't know who threw it, but I couldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing that they hurt me, right? So I didn't touch it. I didn't grimace. I just stood there and I ate it, right? So this red area right here is blood that was coming down out of my eye, right? So at this point, I'm using my Black Lives Matter poster as a shield, and I'm speaking through the microphone. And every few words, somebody will scream, watch out, and I'll put the shield down. And you'll hear douche, douche, douche. You know what I mean? They're throwing bricks, ice water bottles, you name it. They're throwing all of that at us. So eventually, I got frustrated. Listen, I'm a work in progress. I am not Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Like, who was it that chopped the ear off? And Jesus was like, stop. Remember when they came to arrest Jesus? Well, I'm that person who was ready to chop an ear off. But at that time, I came in like Jesus. I was ready to be peaceful, but it was just one time too many that I was pelted. So I went and I was like, to hell with this. I'm going to throw some stuff back. And I went and I put the sign down and I went to see Nepal, who's the 18-year-old black woman from Liberia is the president of Black Lives Matter Greater New York. That is our leader. That's the faith that we have in women. That's the faith that we have in youth. Thank you, Patty. And so Nepal was over, standing on the side. I went and I gave her the bullhorn. Like, they hit me with this shit. I'm ready to fight back. And so I'm bending down, picking up rocks. And this little old white lady, right, had to be like 80, 90 years old. I swear to God, it was like she beamed in, right? It was like, why are you standing here in the middle of this? She was there, and she was like, son, you could do more damage with your mouth than you can with anything you pick up here, right? So when I was walking up to that stage in Washington, D.C., which is a month after this, which is what you watched earlier, it was her words. It was the words of God saying, make them understand who you are, that resonated. So I had been here. On that day, Heather Heyer died, right? A white woman who was on our side was ran over by a white supremacist. I've been back. I've hung out with her mother. Her mother is an oak. I love her mother. But people died that day. So I tried something different. Who knows if I'm not perfect, but we have made progress by working with both sides. Let's see what else we got. Okay, we talked about this yesterday. 1 in 4 people killed in the United States of America that are killed by the police is mentally ill. In New York City, in the last 4 years, I say between 15 and 20 mentally ill people have been killed by the police. The mayor who ran on a police accountability platform said that he was going to train the cops to deal with them. 3 years after that promise, only 11% of cops were trained. We started protesting, we started making noise. He formed some sort of commission and used the black politicians to speak out against us. You got to watch how politics works. It's very insidious, right? So they used the people who have marched with us in the past to come and say, hey, Hawk, y'all take it easy. We have a special commission going to make sure that these officers get killed. Last year on my birthday when I was speaking at Riverside Church where Martin Luther King gave the Beyond Vietnam speech, I heard that Shaheed Vessel was killed, okay? I just attended a march 2 months ago and did an interview with the New York Times about another mentally ill person who was shot for holding a wallet in his hand. So as to date, nothing has been done. We've been going at them as hard as we possibly, we've been going at them really hard. And we'll continue to go at them until we can protect the most vulnerable people in our community, the mentally ill. Okay, you guys know who this is? It's Nick Cannon. He has a very popular show called Wildin' Out. He had a show called America's Got Talent. You guys might know him because he was married to crazy Mariah Carey. And he helps us out a lot. He actually funded us to go down to Charlottesville. It's good to have a celebrity friend. He doesn't give us obscene amounts of money, but he does help us. The reality of it is he did a comedy special where he used pictures of us, and this was comedy. And he talked about the Black Lives Matter movement. He talked about racism in America. He talked about things that were relevant. Dick Gregory is his mentor, and Dick Gregory did the same thing. The CEO of NBC called him and said, hey, take it easy. Don't get out of line. He said, screw you, right? I quit. He walked away from $4 million for this movement. A lot of people talk about Colin Kaepernick, but like people should really start paying attention to Nick Cannon. He's actually buying me a bulletproof vest for protection. He's a really solid guy. Right on. We got 5 minutes? Only 5 minutes? Hold on, let's take a question. Yeah.
small question. What experiences do you have about not differentiating the way we just heard about the aisle, the left aisle, the right aisle? Let me simplify. Black and white, men and women, Jews and Palestinians, whatever it is. But by rather elevating the conversation to a higher level. What I really liked was the very introductory video, when suddenly the words changed from Black Lives Matter to All Lives Matter. And when we are doing actually a different type of differentiation, which is commonly accepted on other levels, like for example, criminal versus non-criminal. But rather, we don't talk anymore about Jewish, Palestinian, men, women, black, white, whatever it is. What experiences do you have on that respect? Because, to be honest, in the last 1 hour, I remember only that one piece from that one video that I just referred to. The rest was more about left side, right side.
It's good, right? Because without the conversations about left side, right side, you'd never have that video. Because I was going there to protest. You know what I mean? I was going there to protest. If we don't talk about women's rights, women would have never had the right to vote. They would have never had the right to work, or they wouldn't be able to express their religious freedoms. If we didn't talk about black people and civil rights, my people would be hanging from trees at a higher rate. We would probably still be in chains, right? So don't talk about it, keep quiet, and just let it work itself out, only supports this white supremacist power structure, right? It only benefits the people who are exploiting people, right? So I need you to understand, we have to have these conversations, right? Because I don't know if you're married or not, you know, you get into a problem with your partner and it's like, okay, let's talk it out so we can get past it. When does that not work? You know? Like, if we really want to reconcile what the world is, we have to address these issues. When you go to a doctor, you tell that doctor what's wrong with you. How else is he going or she going to treat it? We have to diagnose this problem. We really have to get to the source of it. I love when Tiffany said that she was a diversity practitioner. It's like a physician. It's like someone sent to heal. Like, my purpose is to liberate people, right? All people. You see, we show up. Look at that picture, man. Like you have Jewish kids, Muslim kids, black, white, Latino. And I gave a speech very similar to what I gave here without the curses, right? Like, without the curses. And what I just, more so than informing all of you about what's happening, I just want you to get really intimate with me, with my experiences, and with the work is that I'm doing. And hopefully it will say something to you like, you know what, I can't do everything that he does, but here's what I can do as a person. I just want people to get active, because we can't get to that state of oneness, right? We can't be that productive society that we want to be, that we can't give our kids what they deserve until we address these issues.
We know that you are a god.
A servant of God.
If you had a magic wand,
Mm-hmm.
and you could give 3 solutions to the world, or maybe to everybody in this room, just 3 solutions, what would they be?
Love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? When you see a person who is at your border, who is running from persecution or extreme poverty, their kids are starving to death, they might be tortured and killed if they get sent back to your country, it's time for you to step up and say, let that person in. When you see a little black boy get shot down by the police, you need to act like it's your child, right? Don't give me that, oh, police are heroes, they're just trying to do their job. Because if that was your child, you would not be saying any of that. That wouldn't be sufficient. You would need more. You would need what? Justice. So right now, there's a small group of people who hold power. You need to share that power. Use that privilege, right, to help uplift other people. Number two, I love everybody. Make no mistake about it, right? But I don't need white people to come into my neighborhood and help my kids. I need you to go into your neighborhood and educate your friends and their kids about what this is, about what racism is. This is what it is. You have to take the responsibility. You have to step up to the plate. So number two would be to step up to the plate, right? And really be responsible. Everybody be responsible for themselves while working toward the greater good. And you can't say that that's selfish. Why? Because everybody on a soccer team has a different position and a different aim on the field, but their goal and their objective is to win. And y'all might call it football over here. Yeah, man. And number one, I want healthy people on a clean planet, right? Like, I don't want people to have to worry about racism, about poverty. I just want them to figure out how to be the best human beings possible. Not the most successful banker or the most powerful lawyer. I want people to figure out how to be the best human beings they could be and what they could do to help humanity. Thank you. You too, brother.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. We have two more questions, if that's fine. I am mindful of the time, but I did promise them that they could
Okay, cool.
speak. So
I'm here.
two more
I
questions,
don't know
if
who's
that's
that
okay.
is. I'm here. I'm rolling.
Hi, first of all, thank you so much. This is very enlightening.
Thank you.
I was also, I feel a little overwhelmed with all of this information because it's so systemic, obviously. You don't know where to start. And obviously, from what I gather, you're starting to really, trying to address the systemic issue from a more institutional law point of view. Which is wonderful, but at the same time, I feel like that's also not enough, no? Because even if you have the institutional structures in place, it's still individuals in those institutions. It is also, just because there is a law, it doesn't mean that it's implemented correctly. So how do you tackle that part of the issue as well in order to really achieve a transformation in the sense of addressing the issue of having extreme prejudices, racial prejudices, and
Hawk. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. And it wasn't my intent to overwhelm any of you, but I just have so much and so little time. I just want to give you a peek into our world. And you're right. It has to be more than legislative, because right now there are laws that are being that are on the books that are not being implemented. What we need is a revolution. A revolution. A revolution. We need to change the way things work from bottom to top and restructure this whole entire system. You familiar with Alexandria Ocasio Cortez? Yes. She is a revolutionary. Our group was the first group in New York City to endorse her. How did we get her elected? Went into the communities, taught people, motivated people. So yeah, it has to be more than just legislative, because the old politicians, we have to get out of there. Like I told you, my sister's running for Congress. We also have other candidates who are running. But at the same time, we have to educate people. And are there any Jewish folks here? Background? Okay. So what I'm bringing to the black community is a Shabbat dinner. of sorts, right? And we're doing these in housing projects. And on Fridays, we're bringing people in, giving them clean food, and teaching them 4 pillars: financial literacy, teaching them about money, how money works, climate justice, because climate justice for you and them looks like 2 different things. They're walking outside in front of their building and they're seeing rats playing in garbage, and people are paid to remove that, so we have to help them there. Food justice. We've moved on from the state of food deserts to food apartheid. Black folk don't have food to eat. And then you have Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, McDonald's that are literally poisoning our people, putting addictive substances in the food and sending it to specific communities. That goes for poorer white communities as well. The reason why nobody talks about it is because they give checks to the human rights organizations that fights for Black and Latinos. They give checks to the colleges, so nobody's talking about it. But I've never received money from a corporation. I've never received money from a government, so no one can call me and say, hey, Hawk, shut up. And this is what we're going in and teaching on a weekly basis in the poorest communities. So you're right, it's not just legislation, it's building power. I understand if we feed people, if we teach people, I don't have to tell them which way to vote, because we'll free their minds and they'll know what's the right thing to do for themselves.
So what were the other ones? I heard financial literacy, climate justice.
Financial literacy, climate justice, food justice. Oh, you'll get a kick out of this. Mindfulness and meditation, right? Because the studies have shown that people who meditate are more productive. And there's a lot of trauma that comes along with being impoverished. So I have to teach them that Jesus meditated, right? Because you're going to talk to some Black and brown people about meditating. They're like, oh, it's voodoo, it's witchcraft. You're not hypnotizing me, putting me in a trance. And I'm like, no, Jesus meditated, like, you know? So yeah, mindfulness, meditation, that's 4, right? Food justice, climate justice, financial literacy, and mindfulness and meditation. Yeah, we gotta get folks meditating. You don't understand. Like, we have a new program called Rejuvenation. Rejuve-a-nation. We're trying to help build a whole new nation of Black and brown people, to empower them. Right on.
I'm humbled to be at your presence.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much for being here.
Isn't he a handsome guy?
Sharing your story and building awareness. Actually, I did live in the States, in Washington State, and I had a scholarship to go to university, and for 3 years, but I could not finish it because of September 11. So I did get affected by it. I also grew up in Saudi Arabia, a country was at the time in the 80s quite extreme, and I come from an Iranian background where when Khomeini came to power, it was such a shock to the localities and friends and the people in Saudi Arabia, to the extent that in primary school, no one wanted to sit near to me, or after school.
Wow.
There was always a group of kids who were trying to fight with me. And sometimes I got beaten, and sometimes I fought back. But as I grew up, and I traveled more, and I learned, and from what you also shared, that in your family and your neighborhood in New York, there is no lack of educated people. And now, currently, I'm in London, United Kingdom, and we can see how the government is really failing with all the problems that we have, like in many other countries. And these people are educated people who come from Oxford, Cambridge, from. So it seems to me that the current education system that we have is not addressing the issues that we have. So my question is, have you considered taking a different approach in your endeavors, such as looking at it from a grassroots, from a spiritual transformation? That it looks like the education we need from grassroots, kids from a very young age to understand that a soul does not have a gender, a soul does not have a color, and to learn from that from a very young, tender age.
Thank you. That was powerful. We bring God into our work a lot, right? Like, so, you know, we're prayer. Like I told you, I'm a Christian. We pray a lot. We go to church together. But what we're doing on the education front is we're opening up a Montessori school in the fall, right? I don't know how many other groups, you know, social justice groups around the country. There's some that did it, but in New York City, it'll be a first, right? And we'll be teaching from a very indigenous, very spiritual, very militant perspective. And Mario, who's part Latinx, part indigenous, he's actually on a reservation in New Mexico now, learning how to teach from an indigenous perspective. So that's our approach. Like, for me, I can show you better than I could tell you. You know what I mean? I could talk about it. I could be out there walking, so you can see what we're doing. But I think with our youth coalition, we have several hundred kids in our youth coalition that's led by a 17-year-old young black woman. These kids get it. They don't see gender. They don't care about who you are having sex with. All they care about is if you're right or you're wrong, right? If you're for good or you're for evil. I think that the world will be a better place when they're in charge.
We've covered some of this in our workshop, and we have another one coming up. And you know that there's obviously going to be a certain amount of pushback anyway, because I think, you know, from a Baha'i perspective, we don't believe that the current partisan system functions at all. It doesn't serve humanity, and that there is a newer, better model that Baha'u'llah has brought. But I think also at the same time, there is a temptation to go to move straight to oneness. Let's just get, you know, forget about all that aggro stuff and be one. And that is privilege speaking. I think when we try to bypass justice, and it's not our experience, we're not experiencing the brutality and the trauma and all that stuff. So let's just, you know, we got time. We can plant the seeds, and obviously we want to have a spiritual education for children, so that the next generations are better. But for people who don't have time, and we talked about dealing with the symptoms, you know, the doctor would prescribe or would identify the disease and the symptoms. So you're dealing with the symptoms and the immediate challenge. But when you go to a doctor, not only will they try to fix the disease, but they will also try to help you with the symptoms. They'll also try to give you something to eliminate the pain. And it's very easy for us, and as white people, or people who haven't been brutalized and kept down, to not see that, not feel that pain, and not realize, oh well, somebody needs to stand up and defend, or somebody needs to protect themselves in order not, so I think it's very easy for us to just want to cut straight to unity and peace, and why can't we just all forget about our identities, our lesser identities? But it's a false dichotomy. The two things that can happen simultaneously, and like you say, you're a work in progress. We all are. But I think after watching that video the first time, I saw somebody who was moving forward and trying to reach out. We can't just cut people off and say, oh, they're not enough.
Right on.
Because we've got to come together from somewhere.
Right on.
We have one more round of applause.